If you have ever gotten certified mail, you already know the vibe. It is never good news. Nobody pays extra postage to say, "Hey buddy, you are crushing it. Here is a free vacation and a lifetime supply of decent coffee." Certified mail is either the government or your neighborhood's unpaid hall monitors, and both groups write like they are trying to win a Pulitzer for ruining your day. So when I saw that little green slip in my mailbox, I did not feel fear. I felt that specific kind of annoyance that starts in your jaw and spreads into your shoulders like your body is preparing for battle. I signed for it, smiled at the mail carrier like a normal human, then waited until she turned the corner so I could open it in peace, because I already knew somebody was coming for me. The envelope was thick, heavy, dramatic. Inside was a stapled packet titled, in all caps, "Notice of Violation, Case 19C7. And right there, in the first paragraph, it said my backyard fence was visibly unstable, aesthetically disruptive, and a detriment to community standards. A detriment, like it was out there committing crimes. I read it twice. Then I looked at my dog, Moose, who was chewing a tennis ball like it owed him money, and I said, "Buddy." She did it again. Because I knew exactly who this was. Her name was Diane Holbrook. She lived 3 houses down in Cedar Ridge Estates, in a town outside Raleigh where every driveway had a basketball hoop nobody used, and every lawn looked like it was groomed by a professional barber. Diane treated our neighborhood like her personal kingdom. She was the self-appointed curator of curb appeal, the gatekeeper of vibes, the woman who could look at a garden hose and somehow decide it was a moral failing. Diane had previously reported my trash cans for being out too early on collection day, and I am not exaggerating, it was by 40 minutes. 40. She once emailed the Civic Standards Committee about a chalk drawing my niece made on my sidewalk because it was visually chaotic. Visually chaotic. She wrote that with her whole chest. So when the letter said my fence was a problem, I knew this was not about safety. This was about Diane staring at my side of the property line and feeling personally offended that I was not participating in her little suburban museum exhibit. My fence was old, sure. It was a basic cedar fence that came with the house when I bought it 9 years ago. It leaned a hair in one corner like it was tired. But it did the job. It kept Moose in. It kept random neighborhood cats out. It did not fall over. It was not rickety. It just was not. Diane approved. Then I hit the part that made my stomach drop. There was an immediate fine. Not a warning. Not "please address this." A fine. $750, due within 10 days. Plus a demand that I replace the fence within 45 days or face daily penalties. And if I failed to comply, the association could hire a contractor and bill me. I stood there on my back step staring at those words, feeling that hot, stupid mix of anger and humiliation. It is not just the money. It is the way it makes you feel small, like you are getting disciplined by somebody who should not have that kind of power over your life. I am not a loud guy. I work in payroll. I mind my business. I keep my head down. And Diane loved that about me, because people like her can smell "won't fight back" from a mile away. But something in me shifted. Maybe it was the fine. Maybe it was the 45-day countdown. Or maybe it was the attached photos. They had printed photos. Grainy, zoomed in, taken at weird angles, like Diane was out there in the bushes playing wildlife photographer. Except the wildlife was my fence. And there, clipped behind the packet, was a copy of Diane's complaint letter, full of that syrupy, weaponized politeness. "The current barrier diminishes the serenity of my outdoor space," she wrote, "and I fear for the safety of children, pets, and delicate nesting birds." Nesting birds. Like my fence was out there threatening the local ecosystem. I laughed once, a dry, bitter sound. Then I stopped laughing, because I realized this was not going to end until I made it end. I did what I always do when I feel powerless. I got organized. I laid the papers on my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and started reading every single bylaw, city code, and neighborhood guideline I could get my hands on. If they wanted to play paperwork games, fine. I could play. I just needed a plan. And I needed a plan that would make Diane regret waking up that morning with the audacity to press send. My first attempt was to be normal. I called a local fence company, the kind with a smiling cartoon beaver on the website. The guy showed up in a clean polo, measured my yard, and said, "We can do a nice shadow box cedar, maybe a dark stain, very classy." While he talked, I could see Diane through her kitchen window, watching like she was monitoring a prison yard. And that is when it hit me. If I replaced the fence with a standard fence, Diane would win. She would get that satisfied little smirk every time she walked past my house. She would learn that all she had to do was complain, and the world would rearrange itself. I could not feed that. Not this time. So I said, "What's the most permanent thing you build?" The guy blinked. "Permanent? Yeah," I said, "like, if I wanted it to outlive us." He laughed like I was joking. I was not joking. When he offered composite, wrought iron, brick, all the normal upgrades, I shook my head. "Too normal," I said. "I want something that is undeniably compliant. Something nobody can call flimsy. Something with weight." He stared at me like I had asked him to install a moat. Then I said it out loud, and even I heard how insane it sounded. "I want a 6-foot, solid stone privacy wall. Polished. Like a monument." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "Sir," he finally said, "I build fences." "Right," I said, "and I respect that. But I am not building a fence. I am building a statement." He left within 5 minutes, and I do not blame him. That is how I ended up calling a masonry outfit that mostly did retaining walls, commercial entrances, and the kind of work you see around courthouses. Their foreman, a thick-armed guy named Arturo, came out in a truck that looked like it could pull a building off its foundation. He walked my property line, asked about soil, slope, drainage, load-bearing. No small talk. No cute stain options. This was my kind of energy. I told him the story. The letter. The fine. Diane. He listened quietly, then smiled just a little, like he had seen this movie before. "You want 6 feet," he said. "I can give you 6 feet. What material are you thinking?" I took a breath. "Polished quartzite slabs. Not granite. Not this time. Quartzite. Dense, bright, with this icy, blue-gray shimmer that looks expensive even in bad lighting." Arturo's eyebrows went up. "You got money?" "Not really," I said. "But I have principle." He laughed, sharp and approving. "All right," he said. "Principle is expensive. We talk foundation. The association cared about height, not mass. The city code cared about setbacks and drainage. Nobody said a wall could not be heavy. Nobody said, do not build something that looks like it belongs at a museum. They just said 6 feet from finished grade. That line became my favorite line in the world, because it meant I could put whatever I wanted under the ground, and as long as the top was 6 feet above the grass, they could not say a word. Arturo drew it out. A trench. Rebar. A concrete footer wide enough to anchor a small bridge. "This is overkill," he said. "Perfect," I said. Then came the permitting office. Picture a fluorescent-lit building that smells like old paper and defeat. The clerk, a woman named Janice, looked at my plans and did that slow head tilt people do when they're trying to figure out if you're messing with them. "This is a privacy wall," she said. "Yes," I told her. "A boundary wall. 6 feet." She flipped pages, saw the foundation depth, the slab thickness, the polished finish. "Are you building a memorial?" she asked. "In a way." I said, "Yes." Janice looked at me like she wanted to ask questions, but did not want to invite the answers. She checked the measurements, checked the setback, checked the height. Then she stamped the permit with a loud thump that sounded like permission to be petty at a professional level. Walking out of that building with a city permit in my hand was a weird kind of peace. It was like holding a hall pass to do something unhinged legally. The worst part was the bank. I wish I could tell you I had spare cash for a stone wall. I did not. I had to refinance. The loan officer, a man who looked like he slept in a tie, scanned my paperwork and said, "Home improvement." "Yes," I said. "Fence replacement." He nodded, then paused. "This amount for a fence." "Not a fence," I corrected, almost reflexively now. "A wall." He stared at me for a beat. Then he said, "This is the most emotionally motivated loan request I have seen this month." I signed anyway. If you were wondering if I felt guilty, I did. If you were wondering if I stopped, I did not. The crew arrived at 7 a.m. on a Thursday, the earliest legal hour, like we were launching a military operation. First came the excavator, then the dump truck, then the concrete mixer, then a flatbed carrying enormous stone slabs strapped down like sleeping dinosaurs. My quiet little cul-de-sac turned into a construction zone in 10 minutes. And I knew, I just knew, Diane was somewhere behind a curtain with her phone in her hand. It took her exactly half an hour to appear, wearing a spotless athleisure set and the expression of someone who believed rules were a personality trait. She marched right up to Arturo. "Excuse me," she shouted over the machinery. What is happening here? This is disruptive. Arturo did not flinch. Permitted construction, he said. Diane narrowed her eyes at the trench. That hole is excessive. This is not a simple fence. Arturo nodded. Correct. This is a wall. Diane's gaze snapped to the stone slabs on the truck, catching the light, glossy and cold. Is that stone? She asked, like the word tasted bad. Quartzite, Arturo said, and I swear he emphasized it just to enjoy the moment. Diane turned and locked eyes with me like I had personally insulted her ancestors. Evan, she hissed, this is hostile. This is going to violate the association's spirit. I smiled, polite as Sunday. Diane, I said, I am just making sure nobody can ever call it Rickety again. She spun and stormed back to her house, and I watched her slam the door so hard her wreath bounced. 2 hours later, a patrol car rolled up. Non-emergency. Noise complaint. The officer stepped out, looked at the excavator, then looked at me like he was tired already. Morning, he said. Somebody called about unpermitted construction. Totally understand, I said, and I walked to my folding table. Yes, I set up a folding table. With a tablecloth. Because if you are going to be ridiculous, commit. I handed him the stamped permit, the plans, the decibel ordinance, everything. He flipped through it, glanced at the crew, then glanced at Diane's window where the curtain was twitching like it was breathing. He handed the papers back. You're good, he said. Then he walked toward Diane's house, and I could hear him, muffled but clear enough. Ma'am, it's permitted. There's nothing I can do. The officer came back, gave me a look that was half amusement, half warning. Whatever you two got going on, he said, keep it legal. I nodded. That is the plan, I said. And it was. The foundation went in first, massive and unapologetic. Concrete poured into that trench like I was burying my patients permanently. The crew worked fast, clean, professional. A week later, the slabs started going up. One by one, lifted with straps and suction tools, set with precision, joints so tight they looked like a single continuous wall. Then came the polishing. 2 days of grinding, buffing, water-fed diamond pads. By the end, that wall was not just smooth. It was reflective, not a mirror exactly, but close enough that you could see movement, sky, the shape of Diane's house, the way her front windows stared back like eyes. The first time Diane saw it fully finished, she made a sound I did not know a human could make. She ran out like the wall had personally attacked her. What is this? She yelled, pointing at it like it might move. This is obscene. I folded my arms and kept my voice calm, because calm drives people like her insane. It's my replacement barrier, I said. 6 feet. Setback compliant. Durable. Structurally sound. She glared. This is not what the association wanted. Actually, I said, and I pulled out a copy of her own complaint letter. You asked for a structure that was safe and aesthetically appropriate. I took you seriously. For the first time since I'd met her, Diane had nothing to say. Her mouth opened, then closed. 10 seconds of silence, easy. Then she snapped back to life. I'm calling an emergency meeting. She spat, and she did. That night, I got an email summoning me to the Cedar Ridge Civic Standards Committee. I walked into that clubhouse like I was going to court. 7 board members behind a folding table, Diane sitting front row like the star witness, and a room full of neighbors pretending they were just curious. The chairperson, a nervous man named Glenn, cleared his throat. Evan, he said, we need to discuss the structure. The wall, I supplied. Glenn sighed. Yes, the wall. It's intense. Diane jumped in. It's ruining the neighborhood look, she snapped. It's a fortress. It's an eyesore. That was rich coming from a woman who once complained my porch light was too warm-toned. I slid a binder onto the table. I brought the bylaws. I said, friendly as can be. Show me where it says I can't build a 6-foot wall made of stone. Show me where it limits material density. Show me where it says a barrier has to be wood. Glenn flipped through pages, eyes darting. Another board member tried, but the spirit of the neighborhood. I leaned forward. The spirit fined me $750 without a warning, I said, still calm. The spirit said my fence was a hazard. So I fixed it. Permanently. Somebody in the back let out a quiet laugh. Glenn looked like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. 2 days later, the committee's lawyers sent me a letter full of vague threats about unreasonable design. I took it to my attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Tessa who usually handled contract disputes. She read it. then looked at me and smiled like she was trying not to enjoy herself too much. "They're bluffing," she said. She typed one page, printed it, and slid it to me. It was basically, "The wall is compliant with city code and association guidelines regarding height, setbacks, and material durability. Any attempt to enforce subjective aesthetics would be harassment. Also, we expect reimbursement for the original fine if this continues." 3 days after that, the lawyer backed off. The board stopped emailing me. Diane stopped waving at the mail carrier like she owned her. For a week, it was quiet. I thought I had won. Then I noticed something on Diane's side of the wall. She had put up a massive plywood panel right against it, like she was trying to cover it up, and painted a ridiculous mural. A little cartoon cottage, a bright yellow sun, a picket fence, and big cursive words. "Welcome to a home with taste." It was loud. It was petty. And it was, most importantly, against the exact same rules she used on me. So I did what she taught me to do. I took pictures. Lots of them. I wrote the complaint using her own language. Non-weather resistant materials. Structural instability. Aesthetic disruption. I cited the guideline numbers like I was writing a term paper. The committee, exhausted and terrified of another legal round, folded immediately. Diane got a violation notice. She had 7 days to remove the mural or face daily fines. I watched from my kitchen window as she read the certified letter right there on her porch. Her face went pale, then red, then she looked at my wall like it was laughing at her. 2 days later, she and her husband tore down the panel in angry silence. The wall stood there, polished and still, like it had been on that property for 100 years. For about a month, I was a local legend. Neighbors I barely knew would nod at me. One older guy actually said, "That is a beautiful piece of spite," like he was complimenting a classic car. And I will be honest, the wall did make my backyard quieter. It blocked wind. It blocked street noise. It gave me privacy I never knew I needed. I would sit back there with a beer after work and feel this weird calm, like I had finally drawn a line that nobody could erase with a complaint form. But here's the part one did not expect, and this is where it gets messy. Not everybody was happy. Some neighbors started saying the wall felt aggressive. A couple people claimed it lowered their property values. Someone posted a photo in our neighborhood Facebook group and called it a monument to selfishness. One person said, "If Evan can do this, what stops someone else from building something worse?" And then, last week, I heard the city was considering updating the code to add new limits on reflective barriers because the wall catches sunlight in the late afternoon and throws a bright streak onto the street for about 20 minutes. Diane, of course, has been very vocal about that. So now I'm sitting here, looking at the same wall that saved my sanity, and wondering if I accidentally started a whole new war, not just with Diane, but with the idea of what a neighborhood is supposed to be. Was I defending myself, or did I become the problem? I know what I think, but I also know how it looks from the outside. So let me ask you seriously. If someone targets you, finds you, tries to embarrass you, and you respond by following the rules so hard it breaks their power, is that justice, or is that just revenge with better paperwork? Drop a comment and tell me where you land. Was I right to build the wall? Was Diane right to complain? Or does everyone in an HOA eventually turn into the villain? And if you have ever witnessed a neighbor dispute that got completely out of hand, I want to hear it. Because I promise you, I am not the only one who has watched community standards turn into a full-time hobby for the wrong person. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want more real stories where petty people learn what happens when the quiet guy finally stops being quiet.